So welcome. Thanks everyone for joining. Normally we would start with a brief round of introductions. We have 13 people on the call today. Thanks again for joining. So let's do this brief round of introductions. So, name, organization, location, and why you joined the call. And I can just kind of point to people on my screen as we go, as they appear. So I don't know, Wayne, do you want to get started? Go ahead.
Sure, thank you, Alex. I'm Wayne Dorband, and I am in northern Colorado, about 45 minutes north of Denver on the Front Range. I represent a number of entities, but really talking today for the Institute of Ecolonomics. And I'm real curious, how many of any of you have ever heard of that word, ecolonomics? No, I didn't think so. Alex asked, because she's been around. Actually, the word was developed about 25 years ago by a guy who was best known as being an actor, Dennis Weaver. So some of the older folks on the call, I'm seeing a couple of heads shake, would have heard of him. Chester from Gunsmoke and McCloud, he was the star of that, but was better known really for those that knew him well, and I was fortunate to have him as a friend, as a lover of this planet. And he made that word up to really mean, in his cowboy sort of way, helping people make a little money making the planet better. So for 23 years now, our nonprofit, the Institute of Economics, has helped people make a little money making the planet better. So we help entrepreneurs through funding, through advising, through collaboration, you name it, lots of different things, help people develop businesses that will make the planet better. So as you can tell, it's a pretty broad term. And our goal for being involved here is just because we love collaboration, and Alex has been with us on a couple of broadcasts that we do, and I just think that what she's doing here is amazing, and really thank her for it, and just hope to be able to participate and learn.
Thanks, Wayne. Likewise for what you're doing. I hope we get time to share more about it on the call. Adam.
Thank you.
My name's Adam Sachs. I'm the Executive Director of Biodiversity for a Livable Climate, a little bit disheveled at the moment, but we've got some really good stuff going on right now. We had a great conference at the end of April called Power and Promise of Biodiversity, and we're working on another one for the fall. We're collaborating with several other organizations to bring out the message of biodiversity and eco-restoration in new contexts other than regenerative agriculture. So, our work is to change the conversation about climate and about lots of other things so that we are ready to rush headlong into this new era and be prepared for it.
Broadening the discussion.
Broadening the discussion.
Thanks, Adam.
This guy I used to know, he was going to write an article for The Nation magazine, and the editor of The Nation said, keep it down to 3,500 words. And the editors and the author said, I can't even say hello in 3,500 words. So thank you, Alex.
You're welcome. I know, it's one of the things I love, giving people the opportunity to introduce themselves and take a couple of minutes to do it on these calls, because especially today, there's so many new faces, and it's so nice to hear what everybody's really doing. And yeah. So Camilla, you're on mute. I'll unmute you.
Am I unmuted? Yeah. Hello, I'll be brief. I'm Camilla Beckett. I'm a filmmaker. Just seen a rough cut of the film we're making, which is called The Seeds of Vandana Shiva. It's about Vandana's life of activism. And the reason I'm really hanging out with you guys is because I am sort of personally interested in the regenerative. Making the film has made me very interested in all of this stuff. That's about it. We hope to be finished with fundraising this summer, and we hope to be finished by the beginning of next year. So the idea is to really get it out to all the engaged organizations, and from Regenerative to women, feminist organizations, and what have you, just to share her great ability to connect the dots in ecological issues and social issues. So that's me.
Nice. Thanks, Camilla. Next, I've got Monica. Are you there? I can unmute you.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello. I'm here. I've just blocked the audio and the video. But nice to meet you all. I'm Monica Morales. I live in Chiapas, Mexico, and I am interested in sustainable production and healthy consumption, but also improving local livelihoods, taking care of the environment. And I work for an international organization, but it is based in Mexico. It's a non-for-profit organization. And mostly I work, right now, I work just in Oaxaca and Chiapas, but I've been in different parts of Central America and Southern Mexico, basically. So nice to meet you all.
Thanks for joining, Monica. It's so great to meet you. And a huge thanks to Valeria for inviting her networks in Mexico to join these conversations.
Thank you.
We're really excited to have you. Next, I have Raquel.
Hello, everyone. The name is Raquel. Thank you for this opportunity to share with other people. I was invited by Valeria. Thank you, Valeria. I just listened to other conference calls you had that were put on YouTube. And I think that this is a great opportunity to get connected with topics that are more global. I'm in Mexico City right now. I have been working in agriculture for about 20 years in many kind of organizations, enterprises, NGOs, international organizations. And right now, well, I don't belong to a particular organization right now, but these topics are like a personal goal to me. Right now, I'm thinking that all the things I have been learning in these years lead me to improve my own consumption and my own, my daily habits. And I guess that by changing my own lifestyle, I could, contribute to goals like that.
Did anybody else's audio cut out for a second there? Raquel? I don't know if we can hear you. Can't hear you. I'm gonna mute. Oops. We've lost audio.
I lost my...
Oh, we're back. Sorry, so you cut off there. I don't know if you want to repeat what you were saying.
I was saying that right now I'm focused on improving my own food habits and consumption habits. I guess that is a new path I'm going to get in, and it's sometimes for me it's like a I don't know how to say it, but sometimes you have the scientific ambience, and then you have the social ambience, and then you have political ambience, and at the end I guess that right now I'm interested in health issues regarding humans, but at the end the human health it has an impact in the nature, and I think there's a relation there, and right now I'm thinking about that. So this group is very interesting for me because I'm connected to other perspectives, and also it's an opportunity to practice English, and it's important because right now, well, from listening to the other calls, it was very surprised for me. It was surprising to hear about all the things I still have to learn. So this is a very nice opportunity, and thank you very much, Alex and Valeria.
Yeah, we're so glad that you could join, Raquel. I think you'll really enjoy connecting with Didi, who just joined the call. She's just written a book called The Ecology of Care, and she'll do a longer introduction when I get to her, but she works in health and ag as well. And so just a reminder to everyone to, I guess there's some native Spanish speakers on the call, so just to speak slowly and enunciate. Thanks, Raquel. So Judy?
Hi, my name is Judy Schwartz, and I'm a journalist. I've been writing for the last several years. I've been writing about ecological restoration in many different forms. And I came to this work, just a nod to the, let me see if I can say that, ecolonomics. I came to this work by writing about new economics, which is the notion that our economy should serve people and the planet, as opposed to the other way around, that people on the planet get subsumed by the economy. So I wrote a book about soil called Cows Save the Planet. And in a few weeks, I guess a month, let's not rush it, my new book on water, Water in Plain Sight, Hope for a Thirsty World, will be published. And I am hoping that the publication of this book will give me many opportunities to write about restoration and ecology and to speak about it. So I want to make sure I'm up on what people are doing so I can talk about it.
Thanks, Judy. Tim, are you there?
Yeah, hey everybody. My name is Tim. I'm the owner of the Philosopher's Stone Ground Regenerative Nut Butters. I'm on my phone because I'm multitasking, so I'm going to mute my video most of the time. Anyhow, our business creates a line of products such as sprouted almond butter, coconut butter, and chocolate coconut butter called Cocotella, and all of them are stone ground in small batches. So we basically produce high quality, organic, artisanal food. However, I like to say that the actual goal of our company is we're an earth healing enterprise. And that's because we're trying to be the first food product company to source all of our ingredients from 100% regeneratively grown ingredients. So we're working with supply chain here in California to revive, for example, the practice of dry farming of almonds, as well as creating perennial polycultural orchards that grow more things for more species than just almonds for humans. So that's what we're up to, and excited to be part of Regeneration International and network with everyone to make these ideas real and make them happen on the ground.
Nice. It's so great to finally meet you, Tim. I actually just read in Judy's book that California produces like 80% of the world's almonds. Is that right, Judy?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
If it's in the book, then it must have been there. Okay.
Yeah, at least 80%, probably more, and it's growing. It's actually recently surpassed grapes as the most valuable agricultural commodity in California. And it's also, I think, the most planted agricultural commodity besides marijuana, of course.
Wow. Okay, well, thanks, Tim. Great to have you. Next,
Likewise.
I have Valeria.
Hello, I'm Valeria. I live in Mexico City and I'm working with organic consumers in Mexico, specifically in advocacy and campaigns. And well, I'm here because I love to hear stories and connect with people for my own work and also for the best for all other works. And that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Valeria. Les, am I pronouncing that correctly? Les? Oh, let me in.
Yeah, that's correct. My name is Les Sabo. I work with Dr. Bronner's. I do business development work for them. And we have been supporters of OCA for many, many years. And we have been researching the issue of regenerative ag for the last few months and are well, we're about to embark on a pretty significant campaign related to regenerative foods and regenerative ag. And there's really three components to it. One is the sort of consumer-facing campaign which is looking to educate consumers and raise awareness on what regenerative ag is. The second area is working directly with companies and their supply chains to encourage regenerative practices. And then the third area is policy and lobbying and encouraging the right type of legislation that's going to support and build regenerative ag practices. In terms of I just want to say one quick note on the consumer-facing campaign, which is in design right now, but very sort of much on a conceptual level. The idea is that we would do a red type campaign. I don't know if you're familiar with what the fashion and apparel businesses did to fight, well, it was sort of fundraising for AIDS activism, where different brands created their own SKUs that were part of this campaign, and were X% of the sales went to fundraising for AIDS activism. And it was a whole portfolio of products that each, different brands, everything from, shoe companies to jewelry companies to apparel companies, would contribute one specific style or SKU, and then that would raise money for the cause in general. And we're thinking of doing something along those lines, where we have companies that have agricultural supply chains and that have legit regenerative practices, create a SKU, and then market those SKUs together, both in store as well as online, and sort of be able to tell the story of these different companies and their supply chains as it relates to regenerative ag practices. So this is all we're in formation right now, and we're working very closely with Kiss the Ground. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they are a nonprofit that they're doing very good work, and they're also supporting a movie launch called Kiss the Ground that's focusing on regenerative practices and sort of, again, education and awareness building. So they're an organization that we're working very closely with, and there's going to be a number of other organizations that are going to participate, including Project Drawdown, which is Paul Hawkins' organization, and a few others. So we're in the kind of coalition building stages. Our core group is going to be from the natural products industry, and so we'd love to sort of keep all of you posted on our progress there. But I think in terms of timeline, we'll probably be launching sometime in Q1 of 2017.
Nice. That sounds really, really exciting, Les. I'd love to learn more about it, and I'm sure lots of others on this call would as well. But we're almost halfway through the call, so let's keep on with the introductions. Dave Witzel.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dave Witzel. I'm sitting in Falls Church, Virginia, just outside of DC. Been helping coordinate with a group that we're calling RASA, the Regenerative Agriculture Sector Accelerator. So trying to figure out ways to organize and support and amplify the work of other people in the regenerative agriculture space, hoping to move towards a more regenerative economy. And we're just kind of kicking off a number of initial projects that if we get a little bit of time, I'm happy to talk about later, but I don't want to take too much time out of the introductions to do it. So glad to be here.
Thanks, Dave. Would definitely love to find time for you to share more info. I think a lot of people here would be interested in getting involved with RASA. Christine.
Hi, everyone. I'm talking to you from San Francisco, California, and I'm the founder of PastureMap, which is a social venture that's building grazing management software specifically targeted at adaptive managed grazing for soil carbon. And I got into this because I have a history of food allergies, and then worked with a bunch of grass-fed ranchers in the area. And PastureMap was the brainchild that became my senior project for my land use and agriculture degree that we've turned into a social venture. And I'm on this call just to meet everybody because regenerative agriculture is, I think, the most important idea of our generation. And also because I'm a really big fan of Judy's, I have this on my bookshelf, and I try to like display it prominently to anyone who comes to dinner so they can ask questions about how cows can save the planet.
I can relate to you on so many fronts, Christine. So glad you could join. Todd, I don't think we've gotten to you yet.
Hi there. Sorry that I don't, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Sorry that I don't have video today, but I am here. I've been working primarily in the air quality and energy space for a number of years, focusing on energy efficiency and clean air programs, and have sort of got the bug for regenerative agriculture last fall, and have been focusing on the intersection of agriculture and climate with my background in regulations associated with climate to advance the regenerative ag and also look at also other ways of reducing greenhouse gas emissions from sort of industrial ag. So that is why I'm here. I will say there also could be some funding coming from something called Section 115 in the Clean Air Act, depending on what administration we have next year. And that's something we can talk about at some time.
That sounds really interesting, Todd. Would love to chat more about that.
Great.
Who else? My screen got shuffled around. Dee Dee. Hi, Dee Dee.
Hi, Alex. Hi, everybody. So I'm speaking to you from Vermont. Sorry, I was a little late joining the call. I was doing my usual jump in the river. So, I am the author of a book called The Ecology of Care. And the subtitle is Medicine, Agriculture, Money, and the Quiet Power of Human and Microbial Communities. And partway through writing that book, I read Judy Schwartz's book and realized that tied together all these other themes that I had already been writing about, and basically decided at that point to change my work from writing about public health and climate and seeing patients individually in alternative medicine to working with looking at soil health as public health. So I've been working for the last 2 years for the Soil Carbon Coalition, and my project is really around building curriculum for around soil carbon and around regenerative agriculture and appreciating microbial work both in the human body and in the soil. And the big news is that the state of Oklahoma has agreed or asked me to write curriculum for their vocational agricultural program. And that will be in over 300 schools in Oklahoma. So like a soil health regenerative ag supplement for their agricultural program. So that's pretty exciting. So I'm taking time off this summer to just work on that.
That's so awesome, Dee Dee. Really glad to hear that. And I think our last intro is somebody named Alcala. Alcala, are you there? I can unmute. Hello? I don't know if this person can hear us. I'm going to just... So did I miss anyone aside from this mystery person? I don't think so. I think everybody got to introduce themselves. Well, thanks. It's so awesome to have so many amazing people on this call. And I'm so excited for all of you to connect because you're all working on great things. And I think there could be a lot of potential collaboration. But so now's the time where we just kind of open up the call to open discussion where people can pretty much propose anything. I had a lot of you fill in these kind of what would you like to talk about, but since there's so many of us and there's so many things proposed, I'd love to just open up the floor to you guys. So jump in there. And if not, I'll just start with one thing that struck me from what Les was saying that is a kind of a recurring discussion in these spaces is what defines a regenerative company kind of thing. What is regenerative? What does it mean? I don't know if anybody wants to jump in.
I could jump in for a minute here. It's Dee Dee. There were some emails going around trying to define regenerative agriculture, and people were trying to figure out which practices constituted regenerative agriculture. And at the Soil Carbon Coalition, we're really pushing for thinking about what principles define it rather than what practices define it, because the whole principle of regenerative agriculture is that it is responsive to the ecology and the climate and the human needs, etc., of the area. So a practice that works in one place or in one circumstance or one time of year or with one kind of crop or whatever is not necessarily a repeatable thing. But we have figured out, not at the Soil Carbon Coalition, but actually more that the NRCS has defined some really great principles that hold true pretty much wherever you are. So if you're not familiar with those, I can say them, but you can also, Ray Archuleta has some great videos in which he talks about those principles, and I have expanded on them somewhat and sat down with some folks from NOFA, the Northeast Organic Farming Association, to try to then look at, like, within those principles, what are practices that might fall into those. So, and for example, if you talk practices, you can say, well, no-till is a useful practice, but also we know another thing that we want to, and that fits in with one of the principles, that you don't disturb the soil, or disturb it as little as possible. But if you then say, but no-till uses lots of chemicals, then you can have this endless argument about, is no-till a good practice or a bad practice? Is it regenerative or not? But that's not really the question. The question is more, how do we, is there a way of doing no-till without using a lot of chemicals? The answer is it's a creative question, and people are coming up with that. But so anyway, that's my 2 cents, is to stick with thinking about principles rather than like, is this good or is this bad? So.
Maybe you could share the link to Ray's videos, or to where they've outlined those principles in the chat.
Yeah, I can say they're very quick. There's just 5 quick principles. I could probably rattle them off if you want.
Sure.
So and these are in my language, not his, but the first one is to keep the soil covered. The second one is to keep living roots in the ground. The third is to minimize physical, biological, and chemical stresses. The fourth is to include animal impact at various levels. And the fifth is to get to know the context of the land that you're managing. And that's it. So.
Can we get a link to that, please? I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure of a link where they are laid out exactly like that, but I'd be happy to put one up somewhere. Those I've pulled out from Ray's lectures. So let's see. I'm not sure. How do I write onto that? I can. Was that in the chat box, Alex, that you're doing that?
Yeah. So you just click.
Okay, yeah, Alex has got them there.
Mm-hmm.
So I can try to post something in the next few days to the Soil Carbon Coalition website with those in there. But I'm guessing that if you Google soil health principles, Ray Archuleta, here, let me write his name.
Thanks, Dee. Well, one of the questions I had for Les was, so how are you going about in this campaign that you're launching at Dr. Bronner's, how are you going about identifying which companies are regenerative and which companies to kind of involve in the campaign to develop these SKUs?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's in formation stages right now, and it really links to what we're talking about here in terms of standard setting. And I mean, for us, organics are a good starting point, and we're just sort of thinking about it from our own perspective and our own supply chains. We source our key raw materials all over the world, and we have projects that we own and operate ourselves. We do palm oil in Ghana. We do coconut oil in Sri Lanka, mint oil in India. And in each of those cases, there are various regen practices that we have adopted, everything from composting. In fact, in all of our projects, we do composting on a very large scale. We've engaged with an outfit out of Germany called Soil and More. They're soil consultants. They're helping us not only on the composting front, but also mulching, cover cropping, reforestation. So there's a number of practices that, you know, are important to us and that make sense for us. But I agree with what Dee Dee was saying, that you know, it really is situational and context specific. So what practices you end up adopting are going to depend on the crop or the commodity, you know, whether it's a tree crop or a field crop or whatever else. And so we are in the process of trying to work out some basic standards that are going to be applicable across the board. And we don't want to get too much into sort of a discussion about, okay, well, you know, these are the hard and fast rules, and this is sort of the certification process. At this point, it's very much, I think, going to be a little more anecdotal because we are, like I said, very focused on education and awareness building. So if you have a company like ours or like Guayaki or Numi Tea, all of, you know, these brands have expressed an interest in joining this coalition. You know, their supply chains are primarily in developing countries and also tropical countries versus like a Organic Valley or a Stonyfield, which has, you know, animal-based products and products that are really produced here in the U.S. So it is a very kind of custom situation, and I think we're figuring out as we go along what are the rules that would sort of apply across the board.
Unmute there. Les, I would like to just pick up briefly, or not, whatever my version of briefly is, on a word that you use, which is anecdotal. And to me, this is a very big issue because people talk about the science and peer review, and I think it's really important to start elevating quote unquote anecdotal to the highest form of science, because what conventional science has done has torn systems apart into little pieces till they're unrecognizable, till we fail to understand how anything is connected to anything else. And I think that's part of the current problem. And accordingly, many funders want to see peer-reviewed literature and quote-unquote proof. And that's a very elusive concept. But if you look at 1,000 ranches and they're practicing holistic planned grazing and they're mostly thriving, what more do you need? You have the principles, if not the exact practices on each ranch, which is not even applicable. I mean, in conventional analytical science, you're trying to isolate variables and standardize factors, and nature doesn't work that way. So I appreciate what your use of that word anecdotal, and I guess I'm kind of on a campaign to elevate the real life science that we're all seeing out in the natural world, as opposed to the overly formalized reductionist science. And this is not a criticism per se of reductionist science. Reductionist science, analytical science, has gotten us some great information. The problem is that it's absolutely overtaken what anybody's concept of science is and leaves no room for the empirical and the anecdotal. So I just want to throw that out.
Appreciate that. I'm in agreement.
Adam and Les, being a recovering academic who has got about 200 peer-reviewed publications over a 40-year time frame. I sort of agree with both of you. It's a difficult issue because you're absolutely right, Adam. It's not easy to get a published, peer-reviewed, published article in ecology, for example, which is my space. So that's what I've published in, that uses empirical observation data from, let's say, multiple locations. Because of all the issues that you point out, it's really easy to poke holes in it from sort of a high academic level. So anecdotes are really important for what we're doing. I wish that we could figure out how to maybe create some middle ground between anecdotal information and what the scientists consider as, in many cases, fact, which is crazy, but something that has more of that peer-reviewed structure, because it is hard, for example, to get some funding, particularly when you don't have that peer-reviewed sort of work.
Thank you, Wayne. I appreciate that. And I would refer everybody to a wonderful article called something like The Perils of Peer Review by the former editor of the British Medical Journal named Richard Smith. And he really picks peer review apart and analyzes it as a very, he kind of implies that it's a faith-based approach to science.
It's also incestuous.
And it's incestuous. And who's the peer reviewer? And what did they review? Did they just read the article through over lunch, or did they check out that all the references? I mean, I've looked at peer-reviewed articles and a reference says, so-and-so says this, and then I go to so-and-so, and I can't find this anywhere inside of so-and-so. And it's just, it is incestuous, it's competitive, it's, and it's very limiting conceptually. So I think there's a place for it, and I would like to start a journal that deals with what we need to do to regenerate our life support systems in a much broader perspective. So that would include peer-reviewed and analytical articles, and it would include, with equal respect, the anecdotal and the actual experience of real live people on the ground over decades. And
go ahead, Adam. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
One of the things we're doing at RI is we're working with a French startup called Open Team to build something we're calling the Regeneration Hub, which is going to be, I guess, at the most simplest sense, a database of projects. And we're trying to build in a case study feature of projects that have been completed. But there's also going to be a matchmaking feature and it's an interactive platform where you can connect with other people working on similar things. So would love to share updates with you guys about that at another time in more depth. But this case study feature is really something that we're trying to figure out right now. So the anecdotal, we're with you on the anecdotal.
And again, from a personal perspective, just a little bit, have any of you heard of the crop Jerusalem artichoke? Does that mean anything to anybody?
Yeah, heard of the crop.
Tell me what you think it is, because it'll be interesting to see.
It's a root vegetable, kind of. I mean, I've eaten them.
Kind of. It just shows you, interestingly, how poorly it's understood. It's actually a very close relative to a sunflower. And it actually does have a tuber that's a little bit like a potato, and you can get them in gourmet areas of grocery stores. There are over 5 million acres of Jerusalem artichokes in Russia. It is a commonly grown crop. There's about 1,000 acres of Jerusalem artichokes in the United States, even though it's native to the United States. Back in the mid-'80s, early to mid-'80s, when there was a fairly severe agricultural recession, frankly, living through it as a farmer, it was a depression. It was probably worse than anything we've seen other than the Great Depression, which I wasn't around for. But a company tried to start a market for that crop. And there's a long story there, and there's books been written about it, and it failed. But I apologize, there's a train coming. I hope you don't hear that loudly. But I was fortunate enough to be an agronomist or head up a company where I had 15 agronomists in the field. And between 1982 and 1985, we collected data from over 500, I think it was 580 farmers who were willing to participate and actually work their butts off collecting data, which they don't regularly do, and compile it into notebooks. And then to provide it back to us. And then we had agronomists that went around and validated and verified that data in the field. So there was some level of scientific verification to it. This was pre-internet, you know, and pre-even very good digital filming and such. So we weren't able to get as much, you know, visual documentation of it as I wish we had today. And I have about 9 bankers boxes full of that information that's still sitting in my library, that has never been anything done with it more than compiled, because that crop never really took off. But it's interesting. I think we could do a lot like that with farmers today, with farmers that are on a regenerative sort of perspective. And we got a lot of value. Even though we didn't ever publish anything from it, we used that data over those 3 years to provide lots of studies and projects and, you know, things that we got out of it. But still, I've never seen it done anything like that with another crop or another form of agriculture. And in our case, we're talking about regeneration here. And anyway, that's just a little bit of a thought, just a little brainstorming, something.
So Wayne, what would you, if we were to do that with another crop, what would you see coming out of it?
Better management, you know, again, most of that crop, by the way, was monocultured. It was not grown in a way that I would today look at and think would be probably the best way to be managing it. So hopefully it would improve management techniques for the future, farm management, hopefully visibility, possibly. Here's another one, a little story. How many of you know the history of soybeans in the United States, or think that you do? Very few people do, by the way. Real quickly, there were less than 50,000 acres of soybeans in the United States in 1939. Less than 50,000 acres in the United States. Several things happened in that year. One is World War II broke out in Asia, and we stopped getting vegetable oil from Asia, and it was very difficult. We didn't have, we had a lot of things that relied on it. We couldn't get it anymore. So two men, 70 miles from each other, started to develop a method, a technology to extract oil from other kinds of seeds. And one of them being soy, even though there wasn't very much soy even around. And those two men have really interesting names. Usually I tell a story longer, but one of them's Cargill. That's where the whole Cargill company started from. And the other is Hubbard Milling. And they came out with 2 different technologies, patented them. And all of a sudden there was a way now to extract oil from seeds, including soybeans. And with the demand for some kind of oil becoming almost necessary in this country, soybean growth got amazing. By the end of World War II, there were close to 20 million acres of soybeans in the United States. And what if we would have had a tool like I just talked about to manage soybean growth in the same way that I'm talking about here? And maybe we wouldn't be growing soybeans in row crop fashion today with GMO and all the other things. Anyway, that to answer your question, that's sort of a long version. That's hopefully what something like that might be able to do.
All right.
Grazing, not on the row crop side, but part of what we're doing with PastureMap. And we've been talking to Peter Bick's team with Carbon Nation on this, because they're currently fundraising for a coalition of like 130 ranches to implement adaptive managed grazing. So we are pulling in all of the soil maps from the USDA's Soil Mart, and then pulling in rainfall historical data as data layers on top of what people are recording in PastureMap. And like many of our customers are very like educational foundations or people who are already grazing educators who are open to sharing their information. So the project that we're working on with Peter Bick is to create sort of like a portal where new ranchers who are interested in managed grazing but don't really know where to start can map their ranch, and then they can see soil like mine and climates like mine, and then see what other demonstration ranchers are getting, because the anecdotal data is actually, like, I think Les and Adam, everyone is correct, right? Like anecdotal stories with pictures and case studies are a lot more powerful in driving behavior change than scientific studies often in the farming communities. So we are building that portal.
That sounds great. But I just want to add that it's not only that they're more powerful in changing behavior, they're more powerful in generating relevant and pertinent information in a systemic sense, as opposed to a reductionist sense.
So I just want to jump in there in terms of the mapping thing. Christine, I know that you and Peter Donovan have talked some about different mapping projects, and I think it's very cool that there's stuff, you know, different people are doing that, and it would be great for you two to update about what you have in mind, because he's pretty ready to launch an app that will help a lot with adding data into maps. And one concern that I've been writing about a little bit is how when we start defining soil carbon levels. So for example, we remonitored a ranch, and then someone else went and monitored the ranch to look for soil carbon change over time. And there's two different ways that that you can monitor change in soil carbon. One, the way that it's classically been done in research, is to have two ranches that have this so-called same soil types and that are nearby each other, so they've had pretty much the same weather. And you say, okay, they both were doing such and such for, you know, however many years, and now in 2005, this ranch switched over to doing regenerative grazing. Let's compare the carbon levels at both ranches, and the difference between the two is then said that's how much carbon was gained. So if there was, you know, if there's 10 tons more per hectare in this one than this one, and they've been doing something for 5 years, okay, they've been gaining 2 tons of carbon per hectare per year. I don't know if you're all following me, but
Didi, are they measuring the same spot, or so it's 2 different ranches?
2 different ranches. Okay, that's the way most of the data that you see on soil carbon change is done that way. Is a comparative data, and it'll say it's a time series data because they're saying how long it's been since one ranch did something different than the other. Okay, but with the kind of monitoring that the Soil Carbon Coalition is doing, we're monitoring at the same site from one date to a later date, and the numbers that you come up with are entirely different, because if you do that comparative one, and I'm not saying one is better than the other. The first one is very convenient because you can go there once and get a number, right? You don't have to go back 10 years later or whatever. But when people are looking at numbers, if you wonder why one study came up and said that Neil Dennis has gained, 1.5 tons per hectare, and our study said he's gained 9, is because with that fence line comparison, the other place, you don't know if they were gaining carbon or losing carbon. You don't know what the microbial community is in that particular spot. You don't know, if an animal died there, and all that carbon is, or if someone dumped some biochar. You just don't know what happened in the so-called control ranch. Whereas when you're only monitoring one spot from one time to the next, you know that this is how much carbon was gained here, and that's up to that rancher to track what he did or she did in that spot. So does that make sense?
And Didi, that's what I was talking about, of the advantage, and answering back to your question, Adam, earlier, where some kind of an ongoing study, and I'm talking years probably, just like you are, Didi, is a lot more valuable than these comparative sorts of things, because you can fake the data, you can do all, it's really open to a lot more scrutiny.
Right. So the crude way that I put this in an email recently was, you can't track change over time in your relationship by sleeping with the person next door. It's an intimate, our our relationship to the piece of land that we live on or that we're managing or farming or ranching is an intimate, long-term, very personal, very complex, very hard to describe or compare to anything else thing.
I think that's a great point, Dee Dee, and that it is all about relationships. And I'd just like to throw in what our staff scientist, Jim Laurie, says about this kind of thing. Many of you know Jim well. And that is the primary question is the land getting better? Now, of course, you have to kind of define what you mean by getting better. But that's a holistic question, a question that takes into account the weather, the biodiversity, the human component, the species variability and resilience, and that does not break down into numbers very, very well. I mean, numbers are always an abstraction of a system that's complex, far beyond our understanding. So looking at the land, as many farmers and ranchers do, as opposed to the way scientists tend to, opens up a whole other world of possibilities when we're trying to figure out what's going on. Not to say that getting carbon numbers isn't valuable and helpful, and obviously longitudinal studies are much more, have the potential for being much more robust than comparative studies. But the overall question is, how healthy is this landscape that we're looking at in front of us? How resilient is it when Gabe Brown has land that absorbs 18 inches of water? I think it was Gabe in Soil Carbon Cowboys. Absorbed 18 inches of water in a few hours, as opposed to the neighboring land, which is flooded for days. I mean, we just have to look to see that. When you see the biodiversity and the perennial streams that magically, quote unquote, reappear in the Nevada desert, you know that that piece of land, because of the way it was managed, is much healthier. And I think we need to turn that into the bottom line and have the analytical science be the kind of the dressing, the enhancement, as opposed to being the foundation. The land is the foundation.
Yeah, I think that's a good holistic note to end on. Just to be mindful of people's time, we're already at time. I would love to spend the rest of the afternoon talking about this. But yeah, so we've reached our limit. But thank you all so much for joining, and I encourage you to check out the sign-up spreadsheet to read through what people had indicated they wanted to share. Dave Witzel, I would encourage you to send an invitation to everyone to join RASA, because they're having regular calls and forming working groups about things I think each of one of you could be interested in. And yeah, I hope that you'll all join more calls. It was so great to meet you all and to connect. And so we'll be posting this video to our YouTube channel next week, along with the previous one, which our internet's terrible here and I haven't been able to upload it. So,
but technology will save us eventually.
I don't know about that, Adam.
I put a note on the chat real quickly about another group you could join also if you wanted to hear talks.
Yes, Wayne. Sorry, I meant to mention that as well. Go ahead.
Mark Shepard's going to be talking for at least the next 30 weeks. And the topic we just discussed, he went over last night, and there's replays of it. And so there's a link in the chat that you could look at.
Thanks, Wayne.
Great.
Appreciate it. I meant to mention that as well. Okay, thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks, Alex.